Warren Buffett is the greatest investor of all time, and him, along with other celebrities, you could track their portfolio in real time. Whether it's Pelosi's insider trades or what Warren is buying, we try to learn from what these investors are doing. So today we're going to be talking about Buffett's investing strategy. We'll be going over his entire portfolio and so much more. And guys, I've seen the comments. I know you like it when I make fun of me, Kevin, and Jeremy. But guys, keep in mind, I do want to get monetized and maintain a good CPM. And if I'm talking about drunks, convicts, and sex offenders on the channel, that's not going to be very good. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe. Humongous video next week. It's a portfolio update where I reveal the most amount of dividends that I've got ever in the channel's history, and a very important update regarding the channel coming Friday. With that said, smash the like button like me, Kevin, smashes down them Bud Lights, and of course, roll the intro.
Hello, I like money.
Alright, to start off, I think it would be kind of a good idea to go over Buffett's entire kind of investing strategy, mindset, etc. He talks about buying great businesses at fair prices. So obviously, all the stocks that he owns today that we're going to be going over, he probably thinks of as really high quality businesses and good companies to own long term. You can see here that he's basically outperformed or kept up with the market, not including the dividends that he receives from his shares. We can see here Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio compared to the S&P 500, and you, as a Berkshire Hathaway owner myself, I've owned it for roughly 3 years, and I've outperformed the market with that stock individually. I bought Berkshire's my first ever stock at $220, and currently it's at roughly $300, and that's not even the high that it's hit. But you can just see Berkshire's outperformance of the S&P here. Now, it's not just Buffett picking these stocks. We need to keep in mind he has a team of people that he has working for him to help research and pick these stocks. I haven't personally added to my Berkshire position in a while, simply because I don't have the capital to. One of the biggest things that Buffett and Berkshire really looks for is an economic moat, which is basically in a business advantage. So for example, like Apple has it, Microsoft has it, etc. With all that said, let's get into Buffett's holdings. So we're starting at the top weighting of his portfolio, and of course it's Apple, stock ticker AAPL, which makes up almost 39% of his portfolio. He bought a lot of Apple before it really blew up in 2016, and Apple's a stock that I believe every dividend growth investor should own, regardless of their slower dividend growth in the past few years. Buffett's been buying Apple at these prices right now at $150, and you could see he's added to his Apple position recently. You can tell he's just very bullish on Apple long term, and it's one of those buy and hold companies for him. Next, we have Bank of America, which is an interesting one based on the recent financial crash for the banks. If you haven't already, go watch my video on the banking crisis after you watch this video. The link is in the description. And I talk about how it affects stocks like Berkshire Hathaway, SCHD, and other dividend stocks. Right now, a lot of local and nationwide banks are crashing due to fear. It wouldn't surprise me, though, recently if he were to add to this. Personally, I avoid financial and bank stocks really because I don't truly understand their business fundamentals, free cash flows, etc. And it's just straight up a business that I really don't understand, and a sector that, and when I don't understand a sector completely, I try to stay away from it. I'm sure over the long term, big banks will do fine, but it's just not my cup of tea. That makes up 11.19% of his portfolio. Next, we have Chevron, which takes up 9.78% of his portfolio. You can see recently he sold out a little bit of his Chevron, probably due to the high prices right now of energy stocks. I regret and beat myself up for not buying more heavy on energy during the crash. I now truly do understand how energy stocks operate and how they manage their financials to keep paying dividends during volatile times. And as twisted as it sounds, I'm hoping for another pandemic so I get better deals on these energy stocks. Maybe not another pandemic, but an energy crash would be very nice. I own Chevron and sold out of it to buy some Apple, which I really don't regret because I think Apple over the long term will be probably a better holding. But Berkshire's been up over the last year and probably outperforming because of their large exposure to energy, as you guys will see. Next, coming in at 8.51% of his portfolio is one of his most famous holdings, which is Coca-Cola. Every year, Berkshire Hathaway and Buffett get $704 million in dividends from Coca-Cola. Obviously, that's nothing compared to my $15 I get every year from Coca-Cola, but he can work my way up to me. Warren Buffett's purchase of Coca-Cola is just a pure example of the dividend snowball and why you buy companies long-term and hold. I like Coke right now, but I do think it is overpriced. Next, coming in at 7.5% of his portfolio is American Express. I don't really have an opinion on this. I don't hate it. I don't love it. But again, more financial exposure for Buffett. So if you are investing in Berkshire Hathaway, you are getting a lot of financial exposure. Next, coming in at 4.43% of his portfolio is Kraft Heinz. Kraft Heinz is one of those stocks, again, that Buffett has owned forever. It's one of those slower, more boring companies which you really can't go against. Next, coming in at 4.17% of his portfolio is Occidental Peat Corp. He's added to this position by 7% recently, which tells you that you might want to look into this. I think it's definitely a solid holding, though. Next, he owns Moody Corporation at 2.3% of his portfolio. Coming in at 1.35% of his portfolio is Activision Blizzard, and he recently just sold out of some of his Activision Blizzard, reducing his stake at 12.35%. Activision Blizzard has been a value play right now for a lot of value-oriented investors, including Buffett, so I'm assuming he's just selling out of some gains right now. I'm just personally praying that that Activision-Microsoft deal goes through, because as a Microsoft shareholder, I would really like that. Next, he owns HP, which I think is a solid holding, in DaVita Incorporated. Honestly, I don't know much about DaVita. HP, though, I think that's a solid company. I think it's a solid company, as I mentioned, but I do like Microsoft for my computer exposure, of course. Next, he owns Verisign Group. I honestly don't know much about this one either. He has a lot of those stocks in his portfolio where I honestly, God, I'm not going to lie to you. Here, I don't know much about that. Next, he owns Citigroup, so obviously more financial exposure there. Next, he owns Kroger, which is a stock that I own and I love. Kroger has amazing dividend growth, great financials, amazing share buyback program. They recently had a deal with Albertsons, which it makes me curious. I want to hear his opinion on that. He sold out of some of his Kroger recently, but not a whole lot. I think Kroger right now is a bit undervalued, so it does make me a little curious to hear why he sold out a bit of that. Kroger makes up 0.75% of his portfolio, and it's probably one of my favorite holdings. Speaking of favorite holdings, let's look at this next one, which is Visa. Visa is honestly one of my favorite stocks right now that I own in my portfolio. They don't have a huge yield, but their dividend growth and financials are just top tier. Visa makes up 0.58% of his portfolio, and I'm sure he'd like to own more, but the valuation is probably holding him back from adding to his position there. Visa, again, it's just such a high-quality company. I'm going to be dollar cost averaging into Visa, me personally. Obviously, I just want to get into the compounding while I'm young and early. Next, he owns Liberty Media Corporation. I honestly don't know much about this one. Next, he owns General Motors. Me personally, I'm not huge on car stocks. If I were to only invest in a car stock, it would probably be Tesla just because of the future potential that they have. I'd have to do research, but right now in my future, I don't see myself owning any car stocks. But obviously, he sees something in General Motors that I don't see. Next, he owns Paramount Global. Again, he sees something that I don't see in this, probably value. He added to his position by 2.65%. Paramount's one of those companies, I don't think they're the top of the top tier in the media and entertainment, to be honest. I think Netflix and Disney are the top dogs there, but I could see where he could see some value there for sure. Personally, I avoid value trips kind of like this. I think they have okay brands and stuff, but in my portfolio, I want the best of the best brands. So Disney and Netflix would be the only two streaming stocks that I'm really looking at right now in a dividend portfolio, and Netflix doesn't even pay a dividend. Then he has MasterCard. MasterCard and Visa are basically identical. They're a duopoly. Can't go wrong there whatsoever, but I do prefer Visa. Next, he owns Aon PLC. I don't know anything about that. And then he owned Charters Communications, and again, I don't know much about that one either. If I were to go in-depth and talk about all these stocks, really in-depth like I do with some like Visa and Kroger, this video would be easily 3 hours long. But again, you could see the financials exposure with Visa, MasterCard, Citigroup, etc. With Berkshire Hathaway, it's a heavily financially driven portfolio. So obviously they are going to be taking a downturn right now as investors are fearful of, anything to do with banks, financials, etc. But again, one of Buffett's most famous quotes is be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. So it definitely wouldn't surprise me when they announce his next purchases if he did add to any of his banks or financial stocks. Moving on to the next part of his portfolio, we have another bank and financial stock, which is Bank New York Mellon Co. Again, more financial exposure, so when you're investing in, so Buffett's obviously very bullish on this, but a big thing to keep in mind is he sold out 59.7% of this position, so he may be trying to allocate his money into other opportunities right now in the financial sector or elsewhere where he sees value. Next, he owns McKesson Corp. I don't know much about that one, but he did sell out 10.72% of that. Celanese Corp Delegation, Amazon, which is a big one. He only owns 0.3% of Amazon in his portfolio, which is kind of interesting because Amazon, one of those companies, they're giant. You think it would make up more of his portfolio with the brand value and economic moat that they contain right now, but it's very interesting. I'd like to hear his take on Amazon right now. Next, he owns Snowflake, Liberty Media Corp delegation, which I mentioned earlier, Globe Life Incorporated, T-Mobile, which is interesting. That's his telecom exposure, I guess. Another thing you can kind of see here, a lot of diversification in his portfolio. He has a lot of holdings. T-Mobile's an interesting one. I want to hear why he didn't go with Verizon or AT&T for a telecom pick. Next, he owns Ally Financial, which he sold a little bit of. Ally obviously got crushed in the last 2 weeks with the whole financial crisis. RH, and here's a big one, Taiwan Semiconductor. He sold out 86.19% of his stake in that. Taiwan Semiconductor is a stock that he bought a few months ago, and now he's selling out of a lot of it. So he and the whole Berkshire team see something in the semiconductor industry that they don't like. Joseph Carlson mentioned this in one of his videos like a few weeks ago, but he sees something right now in the semiconductors that he doesn't like, which could be a warning to other, people that are looking to invest in semiconductors right now. You might want to avoid it. You might want to do some more deeper research on it because he's avoiding it. Could it have something to do with the war? I don't know. Maybe he just wants to avoid it because of a possible Chinese takeover of Taiwan. And again, TSM, they're kind of like the big dog of the semiconductor industry, so it's real interesting to see when somebody like Warren Buffett sells out of a company like that. He's just maybe avoiding the semiconductor industry as a whole right now. It's really curious to think about. Then he owns NU, LPX, which he just added to, which is Louisiana Pack Corp. He added to that position by 21.55%. Then he has Florin Decor Holdings. So you can see here, obviously, he's owning stocks and businesses that aren't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Then he has U.S. Bancorp delegation, which he recently just reduced by his position by 92%. Stoneco Ltd. Marsh and McLennan Cosmetics, I think that is. I don't know much about that one either, but they have $67 million in it. Next, we have J&J. Obviously, PK Investor are going to like these next two. You wonder why he owns less J&J and Procter & Gamble than some of these lesser-known companies above. You almost wonder if he thinks the valuation of those companies are just too high right now. Next, he owns Mondelez. Mondelez is a competitor to Hershey. They own a bunch of candy and snack brands. They own brands like Oreo, Chips Ahoy, Nutter Butter, and more. They definitely have some solid brands that I don't think are going anywhere anytime soon. Next, you have Liberty Latin America, an index fund here in VU, SPY, so another ETF, Jefferies Financial Group, UPS, which is a really underrated stock in my opinion. Amazing board and management that have consecutively increased and grown their dividend along with doing share buybacks, so very shareholder-friendly company there. And then Liberty Latin America once again. And that, my friends, is the portfolio. So what can we take away here? Obviously, you don't see Warren Buffett doing a lot of active management like buying and selling, but you do see some repositioning and reconstruction of the portfolio. So what can we take away from Buffett's portfolio? 1, don't do active investing, just do buy and hold investing and find out reconstructions along the way and rebalance your portfolio as adjusted. 2, invest in high-quality companies. Obviously, you don't see any small-cap stocks on here like Tattooed Chef. And lastly, what I can really take away is don't panic. You could see him not selling out of all these financial stocks, even with the banking crisis right now. And I'm sure his portfolio has lost a lot of value due to that. If you made it to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want to help me out, help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers by subscribing, share the video with a friend, watch another one of my videos right now. That's honestly the best way that you can help. Join the Discord link in the description if you want to meet like-minded investors, bounce ideas off each other, etc. I'm Ryan. Thank you for watching. And, of course, do dividend stocks, not drugs. Have a good one.